Edward Stanley Michael, a hero of World War II, left an indelible mark on history with his courageous actions as a U.S. Army Air Forces pilot. Born on May 2, 1918, in Chicago, Michael was drawn to the skies from an early age. His journey to heroism began when he enlisted in the military to serve his country, ultimately becoming a B-17 bomber pilot known for his steady hand and unbreakable resolve. On April 11, 1944, he faced one of the most perilous missions of his life, flying into heavily fortified enemy territory. Amid relentless anti-aircraft fire and severe injuries, Michael made the heroic choice to crash land his aircraft to save a stranded crew member. His selflessness and bravery earned him the Medal of Honor, embodying the ultimate sacrifice and courage. Michael's legacy continues to inspire generations, reminding us of the extraordinary lengths a true hero will go to protect his own.
Edward Stanley Michael was born on May 2, 1918, in Chicago, Illinois, into a modest family during the challenging times of the Great Depression. His upbringing in a working-class neighborhood instilled in him the values of resilience and determination. From a young age, Edward exhibited a profound fascination with aviation, often gazing at the skies, captivated by the aircraft soaring above. This early passion for flight would become a defining aspect of his life. In 1936, after graduating from Chicago High School, Edward pursued his dream by taking flying lessons despite the financial constraints of the era. He worked various jobs to fund his training, demonstrating an unwavering commitment to his goal of becoming a pilot. His dedication paid off when he earned his private pilot's license, a significant achievement that set the stage for his future endeavors. As global tensions escalated in the late 1930s, Edward felt a compelling duty to serve his country. In November 1940, at the age of 22, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps, seeking to combine his passion for aviation with a sense of patriotic responsibility. Initially assigned as an aircraft mechanic at Wheeler Field in Hawaii, he honed his technical skills and gained valuable experience working on military aircraft. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, was a pivotal moment for Edward. Witnessing the devastation firsthand, he was galvanized to take a more active role in the war effort. He applied for aviation cadet training but initially failed the examination by a narrow margin. Undeterred, he reapplied and was accepted, beginning his journey toward becoming a military pilot. In April 1943, after rigorous training, Edward earned his wings and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. He was assigned to pilot the B-17 Flying Fortress, a formidable bomber known for its durability and firepower. His assignment to the 364th Bomb Squadron of the 305th Bomb Group stationed in England marked the beginning of his active combat role in World War II. Throughout 1943 and into early 1944, Edward flew numerous combat missions over occupied Europe. These missions were fraught with danger, including intense anti-aircraft fire and aggressive enemy fighter attacks. His exceptional piloting skills and calm demeanor under pressure earned him the respect of his peers and superiors, leading to his promotion to first lieutenant. On April 11, 1944, during a mission over Germany, Edward's aircraft was singled out by enemy fighters and severely damaged by cannon fire. Despite being seriously wounded and with the plane engulfed in flames, he ordered his crew to bail out. Upon discovering that one crew member's parachute was unusable, Edward made the courageous decision to attempt a crash landing to save his comrade's life. His heroic actions that day exemplified his selflessness and bravery. For his extraordinary valor, Edward was awarded the Medal of Honor on January 10, 1945. by President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House. This recognition was a testament to his gallantry and dedication to his fellow servicemen. His citation highlighted his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty. After recovering from his injuries, Edward continued to serve in the U.S. Army Air Forces, transitioning to the newly established U.S. Air Force after the war. He held various positions, including ferrying aircraft and serving in operations involving cargo and passenger flights. His post-war career was marked by continued dedication to military service, culminating in his retirement as a lieutenant colonel in 1971. Edward's legacy is one of unwavering courage and commitment. His actions during World War II serve as an enduring example of heroism and sacrifice. He passed away on May 10, 1994, in Fairfield, California, and was laid to rest at Evergreen Cemetery in Springville, Utah. His story continues to inspire future generations, embodying the highest ideals of service and valor. On April 11, 1944, First Lieutenant Edward Michael awoke before dawn, knowing this mission over Germany would be one of the most perilous yet. Assigned to a bombing run deep into enemy territory, he and his crew were tasked with striking a heavily fortified industrial complex crucial to the Nazi war effort. The target was meticulously protected by anti-aircraft guns, flak towers, and German fighters, making survival unlikely. Yet, Michael's resolve was unbreakable. He had a duty, and he would see it through. As the crew made their final preparations, the weight of the mission settled over them. Michael moved through the pre-flight checks, his voice calm, projecting confidence even as he felt the gnawing anxiety of what lay ahead. His B-17 Flying Fortress, affectionately named Birdie Lee after his first wife, was a formidable machine, yet even this mighty plane would be vulnerable to the onslaught awaiting them. Once in the sky, they crossed the English Channel and entered German airspace, ascending to their cruising altitude. The hum of the engines was a steady rhythm in the tense quiet of the cockpit. Michael glanced at his co-pilot and then at the rest of the crew, each man silent and focused. There was a grim understanding among them, some might not make it back. As they approached the target, the silence broke with the loud, echoing booms of anti-aircraft fire. Flak exploded around them, filling the air with bursts of smoke and shrapnel. Michael's hands were steady on the controls as he maneuvered the plane through the deadly storm, but the onslaught was relentless. A shell exploded dangerously close to the cockpit, rattling the aircraft and sending a shower of sparks into the control panel. The danger escalated as German fighter planes appeared on the horizon, closing in fast. Michael knew that if they were going to survive, he'd have to keep a clear head. He shouted orders to his crew, coordinating their defensive positions as the fighters opened fire, their machine guns blazing. Cannon shells ripped through the B-17, causing damage to the wings and engines. Yet Michael continued to pilot, using every skill he'd honed in training to keep them in the air. Suddenly, a devastating shell exploded in the cockpit. Shards of metal tore through the space, hitting the co-pilot and injuring Michael in the right thigh. The pain was searing, but he forced himself to stay focused, gritting his teeth as he assessed the damage. Smoke began filling the cockpit, blurring his vision, and the instrument panel was destroyed. With visibility nearly gone and excruciating pain shooting through his leg, he knew the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Michael's priority was now his crew's survival. With the bomb bay engulfed in flames, the aircraft could explode at any moment. He quickly ordered his crew to bail out, ensuring that each man knew his instructions clearly. One by one, they parachuted to safety, but then he realized with horror that his bombardier's parachute had been shredded by shrapnel, leaving him with no means of escape. Faced with an impossible decision, Michael didn't hesitate. He would not abandon his man. He steeled himself, preparing for the most harrowing challenge of his life. The enemy fighters were still circling, and anti-aircraft fire continued, but he was determined to attempt a crash landing that would give both him and his bombardier a fighting chance. Injured and exhausted, Michael held tightly to the controls. His hands were slick with blood, and his vision was beginning to blur from the pain and smoke. With what little visibility he had left, he guided the B-17 through a descent, staying just above the treetops. German flak towers continued to fire on him as if sensing his desperate maneuver, but he managed to evade them, dodging the relentless explosions with an unwavering focus. As they neared Allied lines, Michael felt his strength slipping away. Blood loss was taking its toll, and he knew he had only moments left to complete the landing. His hands trembled on the controls, but he maintained his grip, pushing himself to his absolute limits. The bombardier, aware of the pilot's sacrifice, stayed silent, bracing himself for impact and hoping for the best. Finally, with a precision born from sheer determination, Michael brought the B-17 down in a clearing. The landing was rough, the impact jarring, but he had done it. He had saved his comrade, fulfilling his promise to bring his men home alive. In the chaos of the landing, Michael lost consciousness, his last memory the sight of the smoke-filled cockpit and the quiet resolve of his bombardier beside him. When Allied forces found them, Michael was immediately rushed for medical treatment, his condition critical due to the injuries and blood loss he had endured. His recovery was long, and the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain with him for the rest of his life. But his actions on that fateful day became legendary, a symbol of unyielding courage and the extraordinary lengths a leader will go to protect his men. After the war, he continued his career in the military, transferring to the newly formed U.S. Air Force and serving in various roles. He flew cargo and passenger flights, ferrying planes to different bases and mentoring young pilots, sharing the wisdom he had earned through blood and fire. When he retired in 1971 as a lieutenant colonel, he left behind a legacy not just of bravery, but of dedication, loyalty, and an unbreakable spirit. Edward Stanley Michael passed away on May 10, 1994, in Fairfield, California, leaving behind a legacy that would inspire future generations. He was laid to rest at Evergreen Cemetery in Springville, Utah, surrounded by those who remembered him not just as a hero, but as a man who put the lives of others before his own, time and time again. His story stands as a testament to the courage that defines true heroism, a reminder that sometimes ordinary people perform extraordinary feats when faced with impossible odds.
Ever imagine faced like a choice so tough it could cost you your life? Today's deep dive, we're uncovering the story of Edward Stanley Michael. WWII pilot, went above and beyond. We're talking Depression-era Chicago kid, fascinated by flight, joins the Army Air Corps before Pearl Harbor even happens.
Yeah.
It's like he was destined for something big, you know? We've got his biography, plus this gripping account of his most famous mission.
It's interesting you say destined, because growing up in that era, the Depression, it really seemed to shape individuals like Edward. Tough, resourceful,
Yeah, not an easy time.
forced people to be resilient.
And yet here's Edward working odd jobs just to afford flying lessons. Talk about dedication.
Right.
So like a preview of what he'd later show in, well, everything.
Absolutely.
And think about this. He enlisted in 40.
Full year before Pearl Harbor.
Already had that sense of duty, right?
Immediately.
But then that attack,
Changes everything.
I can only imagine how it must have like cemented his commitment.
Oh, totally. Turning point for the nation, and for Edward specifically, it seems.
From wanting to serve to needing to be in it.
On the front lines, facing the enemy.
And that's where he ends up. Rigorous training, becomes a B-17 pilot, one of those iconic flying fortresses of the war.
Oh.
Well, tough.
Far from invincible.
Right, those early bombing missions over Europe.
Incredibly dangerous. Constant threat. Fighters. Anti-aircraft fire.
Casualty rates must have been.
Alarming. Took a special kind of courage to fly those missions day after day.
And the B-17, it was crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
Allied strategic bombing campaign.
Designed for long-range, heavy bomb loads,
Deep into enemy territory.
which meant flying straight into the teeth of German defenses.
Exactly.
Crews relied on their gunners, tight formations,
For protection,
developed tactics like the combat box.
staggered formation, maximizing firepower.
Right, but even then, going up against those German fighters, constant battle for survival.
Edward flew multiple missions,
Yeah.
proved his skill, leadership, promoted first lieutenant. But then comes April 11th, 1944. This is the mission, the one that defines his legacy, earns him the Medal of Honor.
Deep penetration raid into Germany, heavily fortified industrial complex,
They knew the risks going in,
incredibly high. But those targets, vital.
had to cripple the German war machine.
Absolutely.
The account we're looking at, it really captures that pre-flight tension. They even named their B-17 Bury Lee.
After his wife.
Yeah, almost like trying to bring a bit of home with them, right?
Into the heart of danger, speaks to the human side of it all.
Absolutely.
Young men far from home facing incredible odds,
Finding ways to cope.
with the constant threat of death.
And in this case, about to face their most harrowing challenge yet. As they approach the target, the sky just erupts. Anti-aircraft fire. Flak bursts everywhere, the planes getting tossed around.
German flak was notorious, accurate, intense,
The meat grinder.
for a reason.
And to make matters worse,
German fighters waiting to ambush the bombers.
the account describes it the roar of engines, the clatter of machine guns. Then, amidst the chaos, the cockpit takes a direct hit.
Oh man, imagine that.
Shrapnel, the sudden jolt.
Plane lurching violently.
The crew must have been thrown around.
And Edward, at the controls, facing a wounded aircraft.
And his own injuries.
Shrapnel, blood, smoke filling the cockpit.
Absolute pandemonium.
In that situation, survival instincts kick in, right?
Most would focus on saving themselves.
Exactly.
And initially, he does order the crew to bail out.
Leadership, even in disaster.
But then he realizes his bombardier's parachute.
Shredded by some shrapnel.
Unusable.
So now he's got a choice. Could bail out himself, try to survive, but leave a man behind. Certain deaths revealed his character.
And in that split second,
Lives of his crew hanging in the balance.
he decides to try a crash landing.
A crash landing.
Yeah. Severely damaged B-17 riddled with shrapnel, smoke filling the cockpit, fighters on his tail. And he's going to try and land it.
It was. I mean, that's practically suicidal.
Slim to none chance of success.
Landing a functional B-17 is tough enough.
But with a plane in that condition,
Yeah.
limited visibility, enemy fire.
Seemed impossible.
Almost.
But Edward, he presses on.
Driven by that determination to save his crew.
Begins this desperate descent, weaving through flak explosions, fighting to maintain control. Peak account mentions he's losing blood rapidly.
Shrapnel wounds.
Vision blurring, strength fading.
But he won't give up.
He has to get them down.
The mental fortitude, right?
Unbelievable.
Pain, the fear, the odds,
And he keeps flying.
and the bombardier.
Trapped in the nose.
Can't escape.
Knows his survival depends entirely on Edward.
Just sitting there, calmly.
Accepting his fate.
Heartbreaking image.
The pressure Edward must felt.
It wasn't just him.
It was about saving his comrade.
They're nearing the ground, the plane's shaking violently.
And then,
Somehow, he manages to crash land it.
no way.
It wasn't pretty. Rough impact, but
They survived.
they survived.
That's, miraculous.
Right. Testament to his skill, his focus.
And some luck. Probably.
Found by Allied forces, rushed to a hospital. Edward's injuries were critical,
Long recovery
but even weakened his first thoughts,
for his crew.
especially the bombardee.
Sense of duty went beyond the mission itself.
That's what's so powerful about this.
It's not just one act.
It's consistent courage, selflessness.
In the face of incredible risk.
And it didn't go unnoticed.
Word spread quickly.
Nominated for the Medal of Honor.
Highest military decoration.
Valor above and beyond the call of duty.
Think about what that means.
To go above and beyond.
Risk your life for others. No hesitation.
Level of courage few possess.
Edward embodied it.
And what's striking, despite all the recognition,
He remained humble.
didn't see himself as a hero.
Just someone who did what needed to be done.
Could end it there, right? Tale of bravery during wartime. But his commitment to service
It went further.
continued serving in the Air Force after the war,
Mentoring young pilots.
sharing his experiences.
Helping to shape the next generation.
That's what's fascinating.
Not just a single act.
A life dedicated to service.
Took those lessons from that experience.
Used them to make a positive impact.
Absolutely.
Mentoring those younger pilots.
Testament to his character.
Didn't just teach flying, he instilled values.
Courage, leadership, selflessness.
He was passing on a legacy.
ensuring those lessons learned in war.
Continued to
They
inspire.
guide future generations.
Thanks to think, huh?
It does.
Not just heroism in battle, but the ripple effect.
How his actions kept inspiring long after.
And it reminds us, true heroism, it's not limited to like huge events.
Right.
It's in everyday courage, choices we make, challenges.
Putting others before ourselves.
Exactly. We might not be facing enemy fighters, but
Right?
we all have our own crash landing moments, right?
Oh, absolutely. Life throws those curveballs.
Personal crisis, setback at work, tough decision.
Edward's story, it tells us, face them head on.
With that same determination, sense of purpose.
He never gave up.
It's inspiring to think. Courage, resilience, selflessness. They're not just for a select few
They're in all of us.
waiting to be tapped into.
It's up to us to cultivate them.
Be ready when our moment comes.
Because it will.
So, as we think about Edward Stanley Michael, a true hero, what does his story mean for us?
Personally, yeah.
What are we facing that needs a bit more courage, a bit more resilience,
How can we live those values?
make a positive impact like he did?
It's a powerful question.
It is.
Edward's journey, it shows us.
We all have that capacity for greatness.
Selflessness, determination.
And maybe by embracing that
We honor his legacy.
and inspire others in turn.
Exactly.
Well said. It's been an incredible deep dive exploring Edward's life. If you want to learn more, we've got links on our website.
Check those out.
And as you go about your day, remember,
True heroism, it's not about the big stuff.
it's the choices we make,
Courage we show.
the impact we have, one moment at a time.